A sharp, stabbing pain ripped through my lower abdomen, doubling me over instantly. I'm in my 50s, and years of hard work on the farm have toughened me up, but this was something else. My fingers trembled as I gripped my hoe, trying to stay on my feet. Fear paralysed me. Was this it? Was this how it starts? A vision of the grandkids I dreamed of seeing flashed before my eyes, bringing a rush of bitter tears. The rest of the day was a blur of pain and fear. When I got home, George, my husband, was there. A practical man who doesn't have time for sentimentality or messes. His sharp eyes immediately saw how worn out I was. "What's for supper?" he asked, his voice normal. But it sounded like a death sentence to me. I could barely get out. "Soup in the fridge," before I collapsed on the couch, letting out the sobs I'd been holding back. George, startled by this unusual outburst, rushed over and knelt beside me. "Rose, what's wrong? Did you lose something?" I'm dying, George," I whispered through my tears. "I swear I am." "What nonsense is that?" His eyes widened, then narrowed in confusion. "What makes you say that?" "The pain. These awful cramps. In my stomach, my back. I'm so weak. It must be something terrible, something incurable," I choked out, my words tumbling over each other. George just scoffed, looking at my rounded figure. "Come on, Rose. Remember Carol, our neighbour, when she was sick? She withered away to nothing. You, on the other hand, pardon me, are blowing up like a sail in the wind. How can you be dying?" His words, however blunt, had a sobering effect. I had noticed the weight gain myself in the last few months. I'd just chalked it up to age. But George was right. A terminal illness usually doesn't come with such blooming. The pain seemed to have eased up, leaving just a dull ache. "Still, you should go see Martha, our nurse practitioner," George added, ever practical. "Let her take a look. Maybe she'll send you to a doctor in town. Now calm down. Let's eat." "Okay, George, thanks," I said, his words making sense. The next day I went to the village clinic. Martha, young but experienced, greeted me with her usual warmth. Her bright smile was always reassuring. "Rose Miller, good morning. Come on in. Make yourself at home. What brings you in today?" I hesitantly poured out my fears, detailing the pain, the weight gain, the crushing anxiety. Martha listened intently, her expression calm, though her eyes held a flicker of concern. "Let's not panic just yet, Rose. I'm going to order some tests for you. Once we have the results, we can talk more specifically. If you need treatment, we'll figure it out. Sound good?" "Yes, Martha. You're a lifesaver." "Thank you so much," I said, truly grateful. "You don't need to thank me yet. Take care of yourself," Martha replied. Saturday morning brought a phone call that divided my life into before and after. I was puttering around the house, getting ready to go to the garden, when the phone rang. "Rose Miller, this is Martha. Your tests are back. Can you come in today?" Martha's voice sounded unusually tense. "Yes, Martha, of course," I agreed immediately. But a cold wave of anxiety washed over me. There was a pause on the line, filled with unspoken words, with hesitation. My gut screamed that something was wrong. I felt like the world was tilting on its axis. "Martha, just tell me, am I dying?" I blurted out, barely stepping into the clinic. Martha hesitated, her face paling. "No, Rose. What are you saying?" "No, you're—" She took a deep breath and rushed out with words. "Pregnant!" The world collapsed. I sank into a chair, frozen like a stone statue. My brain refused to process the information. A few seconds of dead silence ticked by. Then, as if I'd been electrocuted, I jumped up. "What? No! That's a lie!" The scream burst from my chest, making Martha flinch. My face turned ashen, my eyes wide with horror. "There's been a mistake. My tests got mixed up. I'm 56. I can't be pregnant. It's absurd." Martha just shook her head, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Rose, there's no mistake. These are your tests. Yes, your age is exceptional. It's a 1 in a million case, and it's your case. You need to pull yourself together." My hands and feet turned icy cold, then rage washed over me. pull myself together. Are you out of your mind? I don't want this pregnancy. No way! If this is true, I want an abortion right now. I'm done having kids. It was hard for Martha to withstand my onslaught, but she answered firmly. It's too far along, almost 4 months. It's too late for an abortion. And it's not just one baby, it's twins. I slumped down as if the ground had been cut away from beneath me, my blank stare fixed on a single point. My hands hung limp. Scared, Martha jumped up and handed me some water. Everything will be all right. We'll monitor you, she stammered, trembling with anxiety herself. She had never experienced anything like this. Is there anything else you need? Martha asked when I came to my senses. No, I said blankly, and stumbled toward the door, carrying an invisible weight on my shoulders that felt heavier than mountains. Martha watched me go, feeling sick. For her, pregnancy was an unfulfilled dream, a shattered hope of having a family with Kevin, years of trying, the divorce, then the taunts from her colleagues, who called her the shoemaker's son with no shoes, at the children's hospital. She'd escaped to this village, hoping to hide from her own emptiness. And now, seeing another woman reject what she had prayed for, the old wound reopened. I stumbled down the village street, my gait heavy and awkward. I felt like a freak, an object of future gossip and ridicule. Old fool. No shame at her age. Those words already echoed in my head, chilling me to the bone. I knew I couldn't handle the shame. I knew that even George, although he'd seemed calm about the news, wouldn't accept this public disgrace. A crazy idea flashed into my mind as I approached the bridge over the creek. One thought, jump, end it all right now, get rid of the burden and the shame. I've lived my life, the rest will only bring pain. God will forgive me. With difficulty, I climbed over the railing, looked down at the murky water. Scary, but necessary. At that moment, a desperate cry tore through the air. Rose! It was George. By some chance, he was nearby and saw me on the bridge. His face was twisted with horror. He literally dragged me down, hugged me, trembling all over. I sobbed, telling him about the pregnancy. George listened, and his eyes reflected not so much joy as bitterness and fear. A quiet old age, diapers, night crying, that wasn't part of his plans. But losing me, the thought was unbearable. For the first time in years, he realised how much I meant to him. The news was too overwhelming to share with our daughter, Brenda, right away. They needed to process it themselves. Weeks, months passed. Gradually, the fear turned into quiet resignation. Since God sent them, they both decided, it must be meant to be. They started going to the little village church more often, to pray, to seek support. They began to find joy in each day. As the birth drew closer, the pregnancy was difficult. Swelling, morning sickness, headaches exhausted me, but the ultrasound showed that the babies were developing. That gave me the strength to endure. Nothing foretold the disaster that would come unexpectedly from the closest person. They still hadn't told Brenda, and that hesitation proved fatal. On that Sunday morning, when I was well into my 7th month, the phone rang. Mom, I'm coming to visit today. Is that okay? Brenda's sweet voice chirped on the line. She rarely visited, only calling 2 or 3 times a year. Yes, of course, honey, my voice trembled, my hands shaking. My stomach immediately reacted with a flurry of movement. The babies sensed my anxiety. They waited all evening, their hearts sinking, regretting their delay. Knowing Brenda's personality, they prepared for a difficult reaction, but reality exceeded their worst expectations. Hi, Dad. I won't stay long. Do you need anything? Brenda kissed her father on the cheek indifferently. Her gaze swept over me, and her face instantly froze, then turned deathly pale. Her lower lip trembled with rage. What is that? She screamed, pointing at me. You're pregnant? You're old. Have you lost your mind? Don't you dare talk to your mother like that. George lunged forward, defending me. And you too. Brenda snapped at her father. You should be thinking about the afterlife, about retirement, and you're having babies? George and I were stunned by her merciless outburst, which seemed to shake not only the air, but the very foundations of their world. We raised a snake, George thought bitterly, not understanding where so much callousness came from in his daughter. Brenda didn't stop, scolding her parents like unruly schoolchildren. Have you thought about the future? How much longer do you have? Don't even think about putting them on my plate. I have my own life. I'm not supporting your children. Don't even count on it. My blood ran cold. Resentment and bitterness choked me. Had I raised a monster? Tears burned my eyes. I tried to swallow these words like poison, to pull myself together, but I couldn't. Suddenly nausea rose in my throat, followed by an unbearable burning pain in my lower abdomen. I cried out, leaned against the wall, and slowly slid to the floor. George rushed to me. "Rose, what's wrong?" "I feel bad, George. Very bad. Call an ambulance." "But it's not time yet," he stammered in confusion. "Call," I begged, and another scream tore from my lips. My face contorted in pain, turned pale, my eyes rolled back. My body went limp in George's arms. He went cold with horror. Tears streamed down his face as he dialed 911 with trembling fingers. "Hang on, honey. They'll be here soon. We'll go to the hospital." By the time the paramedics arrived, I was in a semi-conscious state, only interrupted by terrible contractions. The hour's drive to the city hospital felt like an eternity to George. Lying on a gurney in front of the operating room doors, I whispered faintly, losing consciousness. "Goodbye, George. Take care of the children. Don't leave them." "And you?" he asked, his voice shaking. I probably won't be around anymore," I said with difficulty, feeling my strength leaving me. The wait in the emergency room tormented George. He understood that the babies would be born premature, that their future was uncertain. My words, my premonition of death, tore at his heart. He could barely stand on his feet, and when he sat down, his head fell to his chest, and he drifted off into a troubled sleep. He was awakened by a light touch. "Sir, you can't be here," said a nurse with a tired but kind face. "But my wife, she's giving birth." "It's a difficult delivery." George jumped up. "Everyone's giving birth here," the nurse said gently. "As soon as it's all over, we'll call you." She knew about the age-defying woman. The whole staff was buzzing about this unusual story. Giving birth at that age was a huge risk, and who knew what would happen to the children? She didn't want to add to the man's misery, just insisted on the rules. "Okay," George reluctantly agreed, and trudged toward the exit, unable to leave the walls that separated him from me. Only emptiness and memories awaited him at home, which made him want to howl. He had almost reached the exit when he saw Brenda. She was sitting in a chair, laughing happily, talking on the phone with a friend, making plans. The heartlessness and cruelty of the scene struck George to the depths of his soul. Her mother was on the verge of death, and she was busy with her own plans. How had he and I missed the moment when their good girl had turned into this monster? He walked past, unable to even speak to her. Returning to the empty house, George slumped onto the bed, exhausted. He couldn't sleep. I was standing before his eyes, so real. He never told me how much he loved me. He thought I knew. I was always there, like a fortress wall. He didn't notice my beauty, my kindness. And now I was gone. His heart clenched with a suffocating sense of loneliness and meaninglessness. He didn't know that this feeling was floating in the operating room as well. Doctors were fighting for lives, the mothers and the children's. I remained unconscious. The operation was done. The tiny bodies of 2 7-month-old girls were placed in incubators. A young doctor, Kevin Rice, couldn't help himself. Why did she need this at 56? And she didn't get an abortion, the fool. What was her gynecologist thinking? Making a grandmother give birth. And even prematurely. "Tell me about it," a colleague replied. "She's hanging by a thread herself. And the kids, if they survive, will definitely have pathologies. You don't have to be a psychic to see that." "Shut up, you milksops," thundered the grey-haired doctor, Lenny Archer, the hospital's chief physician, who had gathered almost all the staff for this operation. "How dare you talk about a woman in labour like that?" "We didn't mean anything, Dr. Archer. We're telling the truth," the young doctor stammered. "She can't hear us anyway." They didn't know that I had momentarily emerged from the darkness of oblivion, and I heard. My body twitched, as if in convulsions. "Her blood pressure is dropping sharply," one of the nurses screamed. "Oh, God! The heartbeat is weak. We're losing her. Get the crash cart!" But it was too late. 20 minutes of desperate struggle, and Rose Miller was gone. Her body couldn't take it. Tears welled up in Dr. Archer's and the nurse's eyes. The young doctors guiltily backed away. Trouble never comes alone. A few hours later, the young doctor's predictions came true. One baby girl had an underdeveloped optic nerve, almost blind. The other had a severe heart defect. She won't live 2 months, the doctors predicted. The news of Rose's death and the children's diagnoses was the final blow for George. He didn't commit suicide, but his mind refused to accept what had happened. He plunged into the past, into the happy years when Rose was young and Brenda was a little schoolgirl. The village buzzed with gossip. "George has lost it," the neighbours whispered. "Yesterday I asked him about the funeral, and he told me about young Rose, about schoolgirl Brenda. I feel sorry for him." Unfortunately, this time, the gossip was the terrible truth, which even Brenda refused to believe. Her mother's death, so sudden, shocked her, but only because it had shattered her familiar world where parents are always there. She felt no guilt for what had happened. Her heart had become too callous. "Dad, we need to bury Mom. Let's decide about the funeral." Brenda tried to get through to him. "What, honey? What are you talking about? Bury whom?" George smiled. "Mom went to visit her mother. She'll be back soon." "Dad, Grandma died a long time ago, and Mom died yesterday." Oh, Brenda. You've been reading your books about dead people again." George shook his head. "Mom will be back. She'll scold you for that. Go take a walk. The weather's nice. Just don't be late, so Mom and I don't worry." Brenda looked at her father in horror. Her hands and feet were shaking. Unable to stay there any longer, she ran out into the street and knocked on the door of the neighbour's house with all her might. "Aunt Patty, open up!" Patty Smith, Rose's old friend, hurried to open the door. "Brenda, what's wrong? We need to bury Mom. And Dad, Brenda choked back tears. "He's like on another planet. Help me." "Yes, Brenda." Patty sighed heavily. "That's what pain does. Your father couldn't handle it. Don't worry. We'll take care of the funeral. Everyone in the village loved Rose." She paused, then asked a question that made her own heart clench. "What are we going to do with Rose's children?" Brenda seemed to think about them for the first time. "Aunt Patty, I can't take them. I don't have any money. I get a waitress's salary, and they're sick." "Sort it out at the hospital, Brenda. You can write a refusal," Patty said, feeling her blood run cold. "Give up the sick babies." "To whom?" "Brenda. Young. Single, with no desire or means. George. Out of his mind." Rose had no relatives. Her friends were no longer young and sick themselves. "Forgive me, God," Patty prayed silently. "It's a sin, I know. But maybe they'll be better off with the state. And then maybe some childless couple will take them. They say they even take sick ones." The village buried Rose together. They loved her, respected her, knew her trouble. The bitterness of loss was heavy. Only the family was missing. Brenda came, but stood aside, not daring to approach the coffin, not daring to ask for forgiveness. George wasn't there at all. He remained in his illusory world of youth. The silence of the cemetery was broken only by the mournful wailing of the village women. And then, when everyone began to leave, one figure remained by the fresh grave, and sobbed uncontrollably. It was Martha, the nurse practitioner. She blamed herself. She hadn't kept an eye on things, hadn't seen everything. Had she sent her for an ultrasound on the old machine? Had she missed the pathology? Oh, Rose Miller. Aunt Rose. What have I done? Tears streamed down her face. "Forgive me. I'll spend my whole life begging for forgiveness. Your body is lifeless, but your soul hears." Suddenly she had an idea. She shuddered all over, raised her tear-filled eyes to the gloomy sky, and spoke words that sounded like an oath. "Rose Miller, I want to atone for my guilt. Before you and before God, I will do what you couldn't do. I will raise your children. I believe they won't die. They will live. For themselves and for you. I promise. Do you hear? I promise. The words came not from her mind, but from her heart, and Martha knew that she was now bound to fulfill them. The next morning, full of determination, she rushed to the hospital. Right at the doors, she ran into Brenda, who had just come out of the director's office, holding a statement of renunciation in her hands. Martha couldn't hold back. She burst into the director's office. Helen Sawyer, who was clearly not in the mood. The death of a woman in labour, sick babies, refusal. Her hands were full. "What do you need?" the director asked sharply. When Martha explained her request to adopt Rose's children, Helen just tapped her finger on her forehead. "Girl, you're a nurse practitioner, and you're talking nonsense. The hospital doesn't give out children. There are orphanages, and if we're talking about the children of your patient, you know they're premature. Under round-the-clock observation. I can't help you. Leave the office." Martha was stunned then. Not achieving anything, she left. "I won't let this get to me," she whispered to herself. "It won't be easy." She waited for the little ones to be transferred to an orphanage. Despite the grim predictions, the girls survived. Martha prayed for them, bought baby clothes, bringing the moment of the meeting closer. 6 months passed. Finally, an opportunity arose to contact the orphanage. The director, Taylor Harris, turned out to be good-natured, but her words sounded like a sentence. "I'm sorry, Martha," she said, "but the girls already have an adoptive family. A well-to-do, middle-aged couple. They'll complete the adoption any day now." "But how?" Martha cried out. "They should be with me." The director looked in surprise at this strange young woman. "Why with you? You're not married, you live alone, you have a small salary. How are you going to support them, treat them? And they both need constant treatment." "But," Martha tried to object but couldn't find the words. "Exactly. It's a miracle that a family was found for such children. They must have been born under a lucky star," Taylor concluded confidently. Martha sat there devastated. The end. She would not fulfill her promise. Cruel life. I hate it. Her body trembled with resentment and pain. Tears welled up. At that moment, there was a knock on the door. A man and a woman, about 55 years old, entered. "Taylor, we've brought the adoption papers," the woman said. "Good morning, Olivia Smith, Victor Smith. Sit down. Martha is leaving now." The director cast a disapproving glance at Martha. She understood immediately these were them, the future parents. Unexpectedly, Martha begged them to listen. She told her story about Rose Miller, her death, her promise at the grave, her desire to atone for her guilt. She spoke so sincerely with such pain that she melted their hearts. "Martha," said Olivia, "we see that you're a wonderful, kind person, but we won't give up the girls. As you said yourself, they need expensive treatment. However, we can offer you to become their nanny. You can be with them all the time, do you agree?" "Yes," Martha whispered softly. It was the only chance. "What will you name them?" Olivia smiled. "We decided to name them Rose and Victoria." At the word Rose, Martha's face lit up. Everything will work out. There was a long, difficult road ahead, but the money of the adoptive parents and the prayers of Martha worked wonders. Victoria had heart surgery abroad. Rose, eye surgery, so that she could see the world, even through glasses. 18 years flew by in a single day. All this time Martha was there. She lived with them in a large house, became part of their close-knit family. Thanks to her love, care, and upbringing, Rose and Victoria grew from weak, sickly children into smart, kind young women, preparing to enter the best universities. Martha didn't start her own family. She didn't need to. The girls became her family. She couldn't imagine a better fate. The day the girls hugged her, calling her Mom for the first time, was the happiest day of her life. And then, looking at the sky, she whispered proudly, "You see, Aunt Rose, I did it. I kept my word. You're happy there now, and I'm here with them. We'll definitely meet someday." I promise.